A waitress who worked double shifts just to survive was beaten unconscious in a diner parking lot by a Mafia nephew who thought he owned the world. She was dragged into a Boston courtroom 3 weeks later, accused of theft and assault against her attacker, with no lawyer and $5 to her name. The police report had been rewritten by someone with money and power. Left completely alone against a system designed to crush people like her. The November rain hammered against the courtroom windows like fists demanding entry. Lena Vasquez sat at the defendant's table, her left eye still showing yellow and green bruising beneath the surface, a cheap borrowed blazer 2 sizes too large hanging off her thin shoulders like a flag of surrender. Her orthopedic shoes, worn through at the heel, did not touch the floor. The prosecutor's voice filled the room, reading charges that felt like nails being driven into her chest. Grand larceny. Assault with intent. Sentences that might as well have been death. Lena's hand shook. In her blazer pocket, she clutched a crumpled letter stamped with red ink. Final notice. Debt collector. 372 days of her life, every penny saved, every double shift endured, and still not enough. $200,000 owed in 3 days for her mother's hospice care. The number was impossible. The number was everything. The judge, gray-haired and tired in a way that suggested she had seen 10,000 stories exactly like this one, looked down from her bench. "Do you have legal representation, Miss Vasquez?" Lena's voice came out as barely a whisper. "No, Your Honor." The courtroom doors burst open. Every head turned. Cold November air rushed in, and with it came Alessandro Moretti. 6'3". Charcoal suit that cost more than Lena made in a year. His dark eyes held the kind of intensity that made people stop breathing. 2 men flanked him, Marco on his left, Nino on his right, both with visible shoulder holsters beneath tailored jackets. The prosecutor's face drained of all color. The judge straightened in her seat as if an electric current had run through her spine. Alessandro's gaze found Lena across the courtroom. Their eyes locked. She had no idea who he was. She had no idea that the simple act of helping a bleeding man in a basement poker room 3 weeks earlier had just changed everything. He nodded once. A silver-haired man in Armani moved forward, materializing beside Lena's table like a ghost who had suddenly decided to become solid. His voice filled the courtroom, precise and lethal. "I am here to represent Miss Vasquez. All charges will be withdrawn, or we will have a very long conversation about who actually committed crimes that night." The prosecutor opened his mouth. Closed it. His hands trembled as he gathered his papers. But what Lena did not understand was that walking into that courtroom was not an act of mercy. It was Alessandro Moretti calling in a debt she did not even remember creating, one that would drag her into a world where the only way out was through blood or loyalty or something she had not yet learned to name. Before we continue, drop a like if this story hits you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe so you do not miss what is coming tomorrow. Now, let us go back to the beginning, to a November night 3 weeks earlier when Lena Vasquez's life shattered in a parking lot slick with rain. 21 days before the courtroom. The diner called the Silver Moon sat on the edge of Boston like a dying animal, neon flickering, windows streaked with grease that no amount of cleaning could remove. Lena Vasquez worked the graveyard shift, which meant she worked from 10 at night until the sky cracked open with morning. She was 28 years old but looked 45. Her hands were mapped with burned scars from a decade of handling hot plates. Her feet ached in ways that made her question whether bones could actually shatter from overuse. She counted the tips at 3:22 in the morning. Crumpled bills and coins, some of them sticky with syrup. 63 cents. 58 cents. A single dollar bill with a coffee stain. She needed $470 by Friday to cover rent on the one-bedroom apartment she shared with her mother's hospital bills. She had earned $87 in 8 hours. The fluorescent lights hummed above her head, a sound like insects trapped in a fluorescent tomb. The parking lot outside was empty except for her car, a 2003 Honda Civic with one working headlight and prayers holding the engine together. November rain fell in sheets, turning the asphalt into a mirror of the black sky. She did not hear him approach. Anthony Marchetti emerged from the rain like something conjured from it, 23 years old with a face that had never known consequence. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, showing off a gold chain his family's money had bought him. His eyes held the kind of entitlement that comes from being born into a world where other people's pain is currency. He grabbed her arm. "You work the basement, don't you?" "The poker room." Lena tried to pull away. "I do not know what you are talking about." His grip tightened. "You work there. You clean. You see things. I see nothing. I keep my head down and I work." He slammed her against the diner wall. The impact knocked the air from her lungs. His forearm pressed against her throat, and she realized with a clarity that felt like ice water that this was going to end badly. This was going to end in a way from which there was no coming back. "My uncle does not even know you exist," Anthony said. His voice was like venom dripping from a fang. "You are nobody. A ghost. And ghosts can disappear." He hit her. Once. Twice. Her left eye exploded with pain. Her ribs cracked inward like a collapsing building. She fell to the wet asphalt, and he kicked her once more before the rain seemed to swallow him whole, and she was alone again, bleeding into the November night with no one to witness it except the broken sky. She lay there for several minutes. Or perhaps it was seconds stretched into eternities by pain. She was not certain anymore. When she could move, she pushed herself up on hands that did not want to obey. Her vision tilted. The parking lot spun. She had to get inside. She had to hide. No police. If she called the police, they would ask questions. Questions led to paperwork. Paperwork led to scrutiny. Scrutiny led to them discovering that the hospital bills were behind, that her mother was dying in a basement-level facility because Lena could not afford anything better. She limped back into the diner. The night manager did not even look up from his phone. But at 11:47 that night, Lena descended the narrow staircase that led to the underground poker room, where wealthy men and connected men played for money that represented more than her annual salary. Her left eye was swollen shut. Her ribs screamed with every breath. Blood had dried on her lip. And that is where she saw him. The man was bleeding from a knife wound beneath his ribs. His white shirt, now red and ruined, clung to his chest. He sat alone in a back room, breathing carefully, his hand pressed against his side as if he could push the blood back into his body through sheer force of will. Alessandro Moretti was 43 years old. He had been the boss of Boston's underworld for 15 years. He had survived wars and betrayals that would have destroyed lesser men. He had lost people he loved to violence and consequence. And in that moment, bleeding from a wound sustained during a meeting with a rival family, he was alone except for the ghost of every choice he had ever made. Lena did not think. Her hands moved on their own, drawn by something older than logic, something that recognized suffering and could not turn away from it. "Let me help you," she said. He looked at her. His dark eyes, burning with pain and something else, something like recognition, found her face. He saw the bruising around her eye. He saw the way she held her ribs. He saw a woman who had been broken and was still trying to hold others together. "Get out of here," he said. But she was already moving. She found the first aid kit in the basement office. Her trembling hands were steady despite her own broken ribs. She cleaned the wound. She applied pressure. She worked in silence while he watched her with an intensity that felt like a blade cutting through the air. When it was done, she stood. "Do not tell anyone you saw me like this," he said. His voice was deep and solid like an oath. "I will not," she whispered. He studied her for a moment that stretched like a held breath. In that moment, something passed between them, not understanding, not yet, but recognition. Two people broken by the world in different ways. Two people who had learned that survival sometimes meant staying quiet and keeping your head down and asking for nothing. "What is your name?" "Lena." "Lena, you should leave this place. Leave Boston." Start over somewhere they will not find you. She did not ask how he knew she was running from something. She simply nodded and climbed the stairs back toward the world of fluorescent lights and dying neon and a life that was suffocating her one shift at a time. What she did not know was that Alessandro Moretti had made a silent promise in that basement room. A promise to himself, to the universe, to whatever force had put her in his path at the exact moment when his armor had been stripped away. This woman would not disappear into the Boston night like so many others had. Not on his watch. 3 days later, Lena was arrested at her apartment. The police had a warrant. They had a witness statement. They had a police report that bore no resemblance to what had actually happened. The system, it turned out, worked very efficiently when money knew how to speak its language. The fluorescent lights above the counter of Murphy's Diner hummed with a sickness that sounded like machines dying. Lena Vasquez stood at the register, her orthopedic shoes squeaking against cracked linoleum as she shifted her weight from one aching foot to the other. The clock above the coffee station read 2:33 in the morning. She had been here for 8 hours. In 3 hours, she would go home, sleep for 2 hours if she was lucky, then return for the morning shift. Her apron, once white, now carried the accumulated grease of 1,000 meals she had served to people who barely looked at her. The stain near her left pocket had been there since July. She began counting the tips. $1, $2, $3. Each bill was wrinkled, each coin worn smooth by hands that had held it before hers. $5, $7, $12. The crumpled singles and scattered quarters lay in a small pile on the counter, and she moved them around with her index finger like she was arranging evidence at a crime scene. $20, $23.50. That was everything. That was the entire night condensed into loose change and bills that smelled like cigarette smoke and desperation. She closed her eyes. $378 short of rent. Due on Friday. Today was Tuesday. She had 2 days to find the difference between her life and the street. Vasquez, her manager, Dennis, shouted from the kitchen window. His voice was like a knife wrapped in ice. Table 7 needs their check. You missing tables now or just ignoring me? She moved without answering. Her hands had learned not to waste energy on responses. She carried the check to a table where an older man sat drinking coffee that had gone cold an hour ago, and she placed the bill down without meeting his eyes. He did not look at her either. In 12 years of working at Murphy's Diner, Lena had learned that invisibility was safer than acknowledgement. When her shift ended at 3:22 in the morning, she walked to her car through November rain that fell like needles. The parking lot behind the diner stretched empty and dark, lit only by the failing neon of a liquor store across the street. Her 1998 Honda sat where she had parked it that afternoon, a car with a cracked windshield and a check engine light that had been burning for so long she no longer saw it. She sat in the driver's seat and counted her tips again, moving the bills around in the darkness, doing the arithmetic in her head. Her fingers were stained with grease. Her fingernails were broken. She was 29 years old and looked like she was 50. In her locker at home was a letter. The letter had arrived 6 months ago, 1 week after her mother died. It was from a debt collection agency, and it bore the words "final notice" in letters so large they seemed to scream. The amount was written in bold, $200,000. This was the bill for her mother's hospice care. Her mother had been sick for 4 years. Lena had worked every shift available, taken out loans, maxed out 2 credit cards, and still, when the final medication was administered and her mother's breathing stopped, the hospital wanted its money. They were very professional about it. The letter said Lena had options. She could pay the full amount immediately. She could set up a payment plan of $847 per month for the next 24 years. She could file for bankruptcy. The letter explained each option in numbered points, as if this was a normal business transaction, as if a woman's mother had not just died and left behind only debt and a Tupperware container of recipes that no one would ever make. Lena had stared at that letter for 3 days straight. Now she sat in her car with $23.50 in crumpled bills and the rain coming down so hard she could barely see the liquor store sign reflecting in her windshield. She was supposed to pay $847 by Friday. She had $23.50. The mathematics were simple. The solution was not. The black Mercedes pulled up so quietly that she did not hear it arrive. It simply appeared, blocking the path between her car and the exit of the parking lot. The engine was expensive and quiet, nothing like the struggling Toyota engine she heard around her every day. The headlights were bright enough to turn night into false day. A man stepped out, and the rain seemed to part around him like he was carrying his own private weather. Anthony Marchetti was 26 years old. He wore a leather jacket that cost more than a month of Lena's rent, and gold rings caught the light on 3 fingers of his right hand. His smile was the kind of smile that made your survival instinct scream to run. He was the nephew of the Marchetti family, and he carried his entitlement like other men carry weapons. He walked toward her car. Lena's hand moved toward the ignition, but his hand came down on her hood hard enough to dent it, and she froze. Through the windshield, she watched him approach the driver's side window. She did not roll it down. She did not move. He opened it himself, reaching in and unlocking the door from the inside. "You're the girl who cleans at Sal's poker room," he said. His voice was smooth like poison. "I've seen you there. Working nights, invisible, moving between the tables like a ghost." He grabbed her arm, pulling her out of the car and slamming her against the hood. His hand closed around her throat. "You're going to do something for me." "I don't know what she gasped, her hands coming up to claw at his wrist. "Alessandro Moretti comes to that poker room," Anthony continued, his face close enough that she could smell the expensive cologne mixed with something darker underneath. "And you're going to tell me when he arrives. You're going to be my eyes inside that room. You're going to listen to what he says, and you're going to report back to me. Do you understand?" Lena shook her head. Her vision was starting to blur from the pressure on her throat. Her ribs, which had been aching since her double shift, began to scream. "I can't," she whispered. "Please, I can't do that." His fist came up and caught her left eye. The pain was immediate and absolute, like someone had driven a spike through her skull. Her vision exploded into white light and then darkness. His knuckles came again, this time across her cheekbone, and she felt something crack deep inside her face. He slammed her head backward against the hood of her car, and the metal rang like a bell. Handprints bloomed across her throat where his fingers had been. "You'll do exactly what I say," Anthony said, "or I will make sure you disappear into Boston Harbor and no one will ever think to look for you." He dropped her. "You understand me?" She collapsed into a puddle in the parking lot, rain mixing with blood from her split lip. Her left eye was already swelling shut. She could taste copper and fear on her tongue. Through her right eye, she watched him walk back to his Mercedes, watched him reverse out of the parking lot without looking back, watched his taillights disappear into the November night like he had never been there at all. Lena lay in the rain for a long time. She did not cry. Her tears had dried up somewhere between her mother's funeral and the arrival of the first collection notice. She simply lay there, her ribs screaming, her eye swelling to the size of a fist, and counted her breathing. In and out. In and out. Survival was just a series of breaths that kept happening whether you wanted them to or not. At 3:06 in the morning, she pulled herself up. She could not go to a hospital. No insurance meant bills she could not pay, and if Anthony found out she had reported him to anyone, he would follow through on his promise. The ocean was very cold in November. The current was very strong. But she remembered her second job. The one that started at 4 in the morning. She cleaned the underground poker room on Hanover Street, the one where serious men played serious games with serious money. She came in before dawn, emptied the trash, wiped down the tables, cleaned the bathrooms, and left before anyone arrived. No one ever saw her. No one ever asked questions. It was the perfect place to hide. She drove toward Hanover Street with one eye closed and her hand shaking so badly that she almost crossed into oncoming traffic twice. The rain continued to fall, steady and relentless, washing the blood down her face and mixing with the windshield wipers that squeaked back and forth in rhythm with her pain. What she did not know, as she drove through the empty Boston streets in that moment before dawn, was that the very man she was supposed to be spying on was sitting in the basement room of that poker house, bleeding from a knife wound that had severed an artery. And that walking into that basement in exactly 13 minutes, broken and desperate and carrying nothing but her own survival instinct, would change everything. The basement door of Sal's restaurant swings open at 4 in the morning, and Lena Vasquez descends concrete stairs that groan under her weight. Her left eye is swollen shut. Purple handprints circle her throat like a collar. Her ribs scream with every breath, but she needs this job, the cleaning job that pays $300 a week under the table, the only income that doesn't require questions or paperwork or anyone noticing she exists. The underground poker room smells like cigar smoke and money. Green felt tables sit silent under hanging lights that cast everything in sickly yellow. Armed guards usually stand at the vault door, but tonight the room is empty except for overturned chairs and scattered poker chips across the floor like confetti at a funeral. She smells copper before she sees him. Blood. Alessandro Moretti sits slumped against the far wall beside the vault door. His left hand is pressed against his side where blood seeps between his fingers, soaking his white shirt dark red. His face is pale, jaw clenched so hard she can see the muscle working. His eyes are the color of espresso, unfocused, staring at nothing. A knife wound, maybe 4 inches long, bleeding steadily. His men must have left after the meeting ended, leaving him alone in this basement to bleed out like a forgotten animal. Lena's first instinct is to run. This is Alessandro Moretti. The boss. The man whose name is spoken in whispers in every restaurant and bar and street corner in Boston. If she is found here, if anyone discovers that she witnessed this moment of weakness, she is dead. The thought crystallizes in her mind like ice forming on glass. But her legs will not move. She sees her own blood dripping on the floor from her split lip, and something breaks open inside her chest. 2 people broken in the same room. 2 people bleeding for different reasons. She stumbles forward, her broken ribs screaming with every step, and kneels beside him. "Don't move," she whispers, though she has no right to give orders to this man. Alessandro's eyes snap to hers. Clarity returns like a light switch flipping on. He sees her swollen eye, the handprints on her throat, the blood. His expression hardens into something dangerous and cold. "Get out. You were never here." Lena ignores him. She rips her apron into strips with shaking hands, presses the cleanest section against his wound. The bleeding is heavy, too heavy. She applies pressure, feels his muscle tense beneath the fabric. "You're bleeding too much. If I leave, you'll pass out. When your men find you, it'll be too late." Alessandro grabs her wrist, grip weak but intent burning in his eyes like a candle refusing to be extinguished. "I said leave. And I said no." Lena presses harder. The bleeding slows. She uses another strip to tie the bandage tight, her hand steady despite her own pain, despite the way her body is screaming at her to run. When she finishes, Alessandro's breathing evens out. He studies her face, the desperation, the bruises, the stubborn set of her jaw, and something shifts in his expression. He recognizes that desperation. He wore it once, years ago, when his own brother sold the family to enemies and Alessandro had to choose between mercy and survival. He chose survival. He learned that loyalty is rarer than diamonds and more valuable than empires. "Who did this to you?" His voice is quiet, dangerous, like a blade wrapped in silk. Lena shakes her head. "Nobody. I fell." Liars blink when they lie. "You haven't blinked once." Lena meets his eyes. "If I tell you, he'll kill me. If I don't, he'll kill me anyway. So it doesn't matter." Alessandro's jaw tightens. He makes a silent promise in that moment, though he does not speak it aloud. This woman will not disappear into the Boston night like so many others have. She will not become another ghost haunting the streets of his city. Footsteps on the stairs. Marco and Nino burst in, guns drawn, freeze when they see their boss on the floor with a bleeding waitress kneeling beside him. The tableau is so unexpected that for 3 full seconds, nobody moves. Alessandro's voice cuts through the silence like a blade. Take her upstairs. Get her cleaned up. Find out who touched her. Then to Lena, softer, words that make Marco's eyes widen, you saved my life tonight. That means something. The next morning, Lena wakes in a bedroom that smells like fresh linens and expensive things. King bed with silk sheets. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor with rain streaking the glass. She sits up, gasping as her ribs protest, and finds her clothes washed and folded on a chair, a tray of food on the nightstand, eggs still warm, toast, orange juice, coffee that smells like actual coffee, not the burnt water from the diner. She devours every bite. 3 days since she has eaten a real meal. Marco arrives at 10 in the morning, scar across his left cheekbone, eyes that have seen too much killing. Boss wants to see you. The penthouse office has dark wood paneling and leather chairs that cost more than Lena's entire apartment. Alessandro sits behind a desk the size of a small car, a fresh bandage visible under his shirt, reading a file. He looks up. Sit. Lena sits across from him, back straight despite the pain. Alessandro slides the file across the desk. Anthony Marchetti. 26. Nephew of Carlo Marchetti. Known for assault, known for buying off cops, known for thinking his last name makes him untouchable. He did this to you. It is not a question. Why did you help me? Alessandro leans forward. You could have walked away. You were bleeding. That's not an answer. Lena meets his eyes. My mother was a nurse. She taught me that you help people who are hurt, even if it costs you. Especially if it costs you. Alessandro studies her for a long moment. What's your name? Lena. Lena Vasquez. You work 2 jobs. Diner waitress and cleaning crew. You have $5 in your bank account. Your mother died 6 months ago and left you with $200,000 in medical debt. He pauses. Why are you killing yourself for a debt you can never pay? Lena's hands clench. Because she was my mother. Because when she got sick, I promised I would take care of her. Because now she's gone and all I have left is this final notice letter and 2 jobs that will never be enough, but I have to try. Her voice breaks. Tears streak her bruised face. Alessandro stands, moves around the desk, sits in the chair beside her instead of across from her. Equals, not interrogator and suspect. His hand covers hers on the armrest. I'm going to pay your debt. All of it. Today. Lena's head snaps up. What? No. I can't. You saved my life. That's worth more than money. I'm nobody. I'm just. You're the woman who walked into a room where I was bleeding and chose to help instead of run. You're not nobody, Lena Vasquez. Lena stares at their hands, his warm and scarred, her small and trembling. That afternoon, 3 blocks away, Catherine Mercer sits in her office on the 42nd floor. Designer suit. Diamond earrings. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city like she owns it. Her assistant enters. Alessandro Moretti just paid off a $200,000 debt for a waitress named Lena Vasquez. Catherine's eyes narrow. She pulls up security footage on her computer, Lena leaving the poker room, timestamps, dates. Catherine has been laundering money through Sal's poker room for 3 years. If Lena saw something, if she talked to Moretti about the books, the offshore accounts, Catherine's entire operation collapses. She picks up her phone. Anthony Marchetti, please. When Anthony answers, Catherine's voice is silk over steel. We have a mutual problem. A waitress named Lena Vasquez. She's seen too much, and now Moretti is protecting her. If we don't eliminate her, we both lose everything. Antony's voice is ugly with rage. I already tried. Moretti got in the way. Then we need to be smarter. I'll destroy her reputation. You destroy her body. When Moretti tries to save her, we'll destroy him too. The line goes dead. That evening, the penthouse door opens. A small boy runs in, 6 years old, dark curls, bright eyes, carrying a stuffed lion. He stops when he sees Lena, tilts his head. Who are you? Alessandro follows him in. Noah, this is Lena. She's a friend. Lena, this is my son, Noah. Noah climbs onto the couch beside her, completely unafraid. Did you get hurt? He points to her bruised eye. Lena nods. A little. Noah reaches up, pats her hand with his small one. Papa says when people get hurt, we help them. Are you staying for dinner? Alessandro meets her eyes. Stay. So she does. Dinner is pasta and bread, Noah chattering about school, and for 2 hours Lena forgets about debt and fear and death threats. She watches Alessandro cut Noah's pasta into small bites, help him with his homework, tuck him into bed with a story about a brave lion who protected everyone he loved. When he returns, Lena is crying silently. I'm sorry. It's just, you're so gentle with him. I didn't expect. Expect what? That I'm human. Alessandro sits beside her. My own father was a monster. My brother betrayed me, sold our family to enemies. I had to choose between mercy and survival, and I chose survival. I killed my own brother to protect this family. But Noah, his voice softens. Noah will never have to make that choice. I'll burn the world down before I let it touch him. Lena understands then, Alessandro Moretti is dangerous, yes. But he is also a man who protects what he loves with everything he has. The next morning, Lena returns to her apartment to get clothes. The door is kicked in. Her belongings are trashed. On the wall, spray painted in red, "You're dead." Anthony Marchetti sits on her broken couch, smirking. 2 of his men block the door. Did you really think Moretti could protect you? Anthony stands, advances. He's got enemies, sweetheart. Catherine Mercer owns half the cops in this city. When we're done with you, there won't be enough left for him to bury. Lena backs against the wall. Anthony grabs her throat, same place as before, squeezes until she cannot breathe. The door explodes inward. Marco and Nino storm in, guns drawn. Anthony releases her, hands up, smirking. Can't kill me. My uncle would start a war. Marco's gun does not waver. Boss says touch her again, and war is exactly what you'll get. Anthony backs toward the door, eyes on Lena. This isn't over. But it is. Because Catherine Mercer has already set her final trap. The courtroom is silent except for the sound of a pen scratching against paper. Judge Harrison's gavel hovers above the bench. Lena Vasquez sits at the defendant's table in a borrowed gray suit that hangs loose on her frame, her hands trembling so violently she has to grip the wooden edge to stop them shaking. Her left eye is still swollen purple from Anthony Marchetti's fists. The courtroom gallery is nearly empty, no family, no friends, just a legal aid lawyer who met her 15 minutes before the hearing began. The judge reads from the document before him. Ms. Vasquez, you are being sued for $200,000 in unpaid medical bills from St. Mary's Hospital, stemming from complications during your daughter's birth 7 years ago. The hospital is seeking full payment within 3 days, or they will pursue wage garnishment and asset seizure. 3 days. $200,000. Lena has $5 in her pocket. The gallery doors open. Everyone turns. A man walks in wearing a charcoal suit that costs more than everything Lena owns, his white shirt open at the throat revealing a scar running from collarbone to shoulder blade. Alessandro Moretti. His dark eyes scan the courtroom with the precision of a general surveying a battlefield. Marco and Nino flank him, their suits identical, their faces carved from stone. The judge's jaw tightens. Even he knows who Alessandro is. Lena's breath catches. She has never seen this man before, yet something in the way he looks at her, like she is not invisible, like she matters, makes her chest constrict. But why would a man like him look at someone like her? She is nobody. A night shift waitress who counts pennies. A woman so broken the system has already decided she is disposable. What Lena does not know is that Alessandro Moretti has been searching for her for 3 days. What she does not know is that this moment, right now, in this fluorescent-lit courtroom with its plastic chairs and its tired judge, will shatter both their lives into pieces they will spend years learning to reassemble. Now, let us go back to the beginning to understand how a woman with nothing and a man with everything found each other in the darkness. 48 hours earlier. 3:15 in the morning. Lena Vasquez stands in the walk-in freezer of Sullivan's Diner on the outskirts of Boston, counting inventory because counting is the only thing that keeps her from screaming. Packages of frozen chicken stacked in rows of 5. Beef patties organized by weight. Her breath mists in the cold air, and her fingers have gone numb, which is fine because numb is better than feeling anything at all. She has worked a double shift, 14 hours, and made $17 in tips. $17. One customer paid with coins because he said the eggs were overcooked, even though she had watched them cook, watched them slide onto the plate with their yolks perfectly intact. $17.43 is what stands between her and eviction. Her daughter, Maya, is 7 years old and asleep in the apartment they rent for $900 a month, money Lena does not have. The hospital bill sits on the kitchen counter. Final notice. Stamped in red ink across the envelope. $200,000. The surgery to repair Maya's heart defect. The 3 weeks in the PQ. The medications that cost more than food. Lena pulls her thin jacket tighter and steps out of the freezer into the kitchen heat. The head cook, a man named Steve who has worked here for 20 years and has never once looked her in the eye, is scrubbing the grill. He does not greet her. He never does. She clocks out at 4:17 in the morning. The November wind tears through the empty parking lot like a blade wrapped in ice. Her car is parked in the far corner, a 2009 Honda with a check engine light that has been on for 8 months. As she walks toward it, a black SUV pulls into the lot, moving slow, deliberate, unhurried. 5 men get out. One of them is Anthony Marchetti, nephew of Carlo Marchetti, one of the most dangerous men in Boston. Lena recognizes him from the neighborhood. She has seen him at the poker room in the basement of Sullivan's, where she works as a maid on Wednesday nights, cleaning up spilled drinks and broken glass and sometimes blood. Anthony smiles. It is not a kind smile. Lena Vasquez. He says her name like it tastes bad in his mouth. She does not answer. She has learned that silence is sometimes survival. He crosses the parking lot in 4 strides. His men spread out, cutting off her path to the car. Anthony grabs her jaw, forces her face up to his. His breath smells like whiskey and cigars. You work Wednesdays. That's our room. You clean up after us. You see things you shouldn't see. I don't see anything, Lena whispers. I just clean. Exactly. You just clean. You keep your mouth shut. You forget what you see. His free hand moves to her throat. Or there are consequences. What happens next happens in silence, except for the sound of her own breathing, which becomes harder and harder to manage. His fingers tighten. Stars explode in her vision. She tries to pull away, but he is stronger, and she is so tired, and she has no one to scream for. When he finally releases her, she collapses to the asphalt, gasping, her hand pressed to her neck where his fingers have left marks that will bloom into bruises by morning. Anthony leans down, whispers in her ear, "Keep your mouth shut, and you might live through the week." He leaves her there in the parking lot, November rain starting to fall, her breath coming in panic gasps. 2 hours later, she is in the basement poker room, cleaning blood from the floor. Her own blood, from where she scraped her knee when she fell. The bruises on her throat are hidden under a turtleneck. She works methodically, her hands moving on autopilot because if she stops moving, she will fall apart completely. That is when she sees him. A man sits at the back table, alone, his shirt soaked with blood. His own blood. A deep gash runs from his ribs up toward his shoulder, and his hand is pressed against it, trying to stop the bleeding. His face is pale, his jaw clenched, and his dark eyes are closed as if he is trying to will the pain away through sheer force of will. She should leave him alone. This is not her business. But something in her, something that has not been touched by all the darkness, all the loss, moves toward him instead. "You need a hospital," she says. Her voice is barely a whisper. He opens his eyes. They are black and burning and ancient, like they have seen every terrible thing the world has to offer. When he looks at her, something shifts in his chest, though he does not show it. No hospitals. Police? She understands. He is Alessandro Moretti. Without thinking of consequence, without understanding that this moment will change everything, Lena pulls off her apron and presses it against his wound. She applies pressure, her trembling hand steady despite her own broken ribs, despite the handprints blooming across her throat. Blood seeps through the fabric. She does not flinch. "Who hurt you?" he asks. "It doesn't matter," she says. "It matters to me." When their eyes meet, Lena sees something she has never seen before, a man who looks at her like she is not invisible. Like she is worth noticing. Like she is worth saving. 3 days pass. The $200,000 debt looms. The court date arrives with its fluorescent lights and its plastic chairs and its tired judge who has already written her off as another disposable woman. She sits at the defendant's table, alone, terrified, knowing that in 3 days they will take her apartment, take her dignity, take the last thing she has left, her daughter's stability. And then the courtroom doors open. Alessandro Moretti walks in wearing a suit worth more than a year of her salary, his scar visible, his men flanking him like a king's guard. He does not look at the judge. He looks only at Lena. When he speaks, his voice is deep and solid like an oath. "I am paying the debt." The judge blinks. "Excuse me." $200,000. Alessandro places a check on the judge's desk, and the room fills with the sound of his men shifting their weight, with the whisper of expensive fabric, with the sudden understanding that nothing here is what it seemed. For Maya Vasquez's medical expenses. Paid in full. The charges are dismissed. The legal aid lawyer stares. The judge stares. Lena stares, tears streaming down her swollen face. But what Catherine Mercer did not know, from her penthouse office across the city, was that by saving Lena Vasquez, Alessandro Moretti had just made an enemy of a woman who has spent 15 years building a network of corrupt police officers, judges, and federal agents, a woman who does not tolerate loose ends, and who has already decided that Lena Vasquez knows too much about the poker room, about the money, about everything. And what Anthony Marchetti did not know, as he drove through Boston's North End, was that he had just made the one mistake that would cost him everything. Because Alessandro Moretti does not forgive violence against the people he chooses to protect. He burns them from existence. Slowly. 3 days later, the news vans arrive outside Alessandro's building. Lena watches from the penthouse window as reporters set up cameras, as helicopters circle overhead. The morning news crawls across the television screen, mystery woman linked to Moretti crime family. FBI investigating missing $200,000 from charity fund. Catherine Mercer has released footage. Audio. Fabricated evidence so perfect that even Lena's lawyers are shaking their heads. It looks real. It sounds real. It is designed to destroy. Alessandro stands at the window beside her, his hand on her shoulder, his jaw clenched. She made a mistake. What mistake? Lena asks. Believing that she was the most dangerous person in this room. That night, at exactly 2:33 a.m., Alessandro makes 2 calls. The first summons 12 men in black tactical gear to the warehouse by the docks. The second reaches a federal contact he has kept in his pocket for situations exactly like this, Catherine Mercer. Wire transfers. Offshore accounts. 3 years of money laundering. Arrest her at dawn. When Marco and Nino bring Anthony Marchetti into the warehouse, dragging him by his arms, the young man is still smirking. Still believing his uncle's name will save him. Then the recording plays. Anthony's own voice bragging about beating Lena, about working with Catherine, about planning to kill Noah, Alessandro's 5-year-old son. His uncle's voice comes next, crackling through a speaker. You did what? You're no longer a Marchetti. Disowned. Erased. When the Russian men arrive to collect their debt from the card game Anthony cheated at, they drag him into the darkness, and his screaming is the sound of a man who finally understands that his name means nothing now. At 6:02 a.m., Catherine Mercer is arrested in her penthouse. Federal agents. Tactical gear. Cameras from every news station. She screams about lawyers and connections, but the evidence is overwhelming. 40 years minimum. Federal prison. Her empire seized. Her name toxic. As she is shoved into the FBI van, she sees Lena standing across the street with Alessandro, and her face contorts with rage. Lena does not look away. She just stands there, watching the woman who tried to destroy her disappear into the darkness, knowing that sometimes justice is simply surviving when your enemy believed you would break. 1 year passes like a held breath finally released. Lena stands in the kitchen of the House of Hope, a shelter she opened with Alessandro's foundation, teaching a young woman how to fill out a job application. She wears confidence now like armor, her bruises long since faded, her spine straight. The woman across from her cries softly, and Lena reaches across the table and squeezes her hand. You are not invisible, Lena says. You never were. That evening, at sunset, Alessandro finds her on the balcony of his apartment overlooking the city lights. Noah sleeps in the room behind them, his small hand still wrapped around the bookmark his father made, a leather strip with a lion embossed on it. He called you mommy today, Alessandro says. At school. When someone asked who picks him up, he said, my mommy, Lena. Lena's breath catches. She has been waiting for this moment, terrified of it, praying for it. He was right to, Alessandro says. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small box. When he opens it, a diamond ring catches the city lights and throws them back, multiplied, infinite. I have spent my entire life building an empire. Burning enemies. Making war. But none of that meant anything until I saw you standing in that poker room, bleeding on my shirt, and you chose to help me instead of saving yourself. He gets on one knee. His men, waiting in the apartment behind them, witness this moment in stunned silence. In 15 years, they have never seen their boss vulnerable. Never seen him kneel for anything. Lena Vasquez, you gave me something no amount of power could buy, our reason to be better. Will you marry me? She says yes before he finishes speaking. This is where the darkness ends, and the light begins. This is where invisible becomes unforgettable. This is where a woman with $5 in her pocket and a man with an empire finally understand that family is not always bound by blood but by those who choose to stay when the storm arrives. 1 week after the judge's gavel came down, Lena Vasquez stands in the Boston courtroom again, but this time the light falls differently through the tall windows. The same wooden benches, the same seal of justice on the wall, the same cold marble floor, but the air tastes like freedom instead of fear. The charges are gone. Erased. The prosecutor who bent his knees to Catherine Mercer's bribes has been disbarred and is facing federal charges himself. The judge, the same man who looked at Lena with suspicion just weeks ago, now looks at her with something that resembles shame. He apologizes from the bench, his words formal but heavy with regret, and says what every person in that room needs to hear: the injustice done to you should never have occurred in my courtroom. I am sorry. When the gavel comes down one final time, it is not a hammer of condemnation. It is a release. Noah, sitting on Alessandro's lap in the gallery, claps his small hands together and yells, "Yay, Lena!" His voice is pure and bright like a bell, and the courtroom erupts in murmurs. Lena's eyes find Alessandro's across the room, and what passes between them needs no words. Marco and Nino stand like sentries on either side of them, their faces unreadable, but in their eyes is something that looks like satisfaction. Alessandro's gaze never wavers from Lena's face, not once, not even when she walks past the prosecutor's empty table, not even when she approaches the bench to sign the final documents. His intensity is like a blade wrapped in the softest light, protective and unwavering. That evening, as the sunset bleeds orange and gold across the skyline, Lena crosses the threshold of Alessandro's penthouse for the first time, not as a guest seeking shelter, but as someone who belongs. Her hands tremble slightly as she holds the key he gave her, identical to his own, stamped with his initials in silver. Alessandro meets her at the door. His apartment is massive, all floor-to-ceiling windows and leather furniture that probably costs more than she earned in 5 years, but he guides her gently through the space as if they're walking through something sacred. "Your room is the one overlooking the park," he says, and then he pauses. His jaw tightens. "But I had them put your things in my room." If you want." Lena steps forward and kisses him, soft and deliberate, her answer written on her lips. When she pulls back, she can feel his heartbeat against her chest, fast and unsteady, and she realizes he was nervous. This man who commands armies and moves through the world like a general surveying a battlefield was nervous about asking her to stay. Noah runs in from the kitchen, his small feet slapping against the marble floor, and he grabs Lena's hand with both of his. "Are you staying forever?" he asks, and the question carries the weight of every goodbye he has ever witnessed, every disappearance he has ever endured. Lena kneels down to his level, and her eyes fill with tears that spill over without shame. "If your papa will have me, yes. Forever and ever." Alessandro pulls them both into his arms, and for a moment, the penthouse is not a fortress of glass and steel. It is a home. 3 months later, Lena stands in Alessandro's kitchen wearing jeans and one of his white shirts, the sleeves rolled up past her elbows, no more grease-stained apron clinging to her skin, no more worn-through shoes on her feet. Her hands move across the counter with the muscle memory of 1,000 shifts at the diner, but now she cooks because she wants to, because the people she loves will sit at her table and eat what she makes. Noah sits at the marble counter doing his homework, his tongue poking out slightly in concentration, his small backpack with a lion emblem hanging from the back of a chair. The apartment smells like fresh pasta and basil and something that tastes like peace, like the rain washing away 3 years of dirt. Alessandro walks in from a meeting, and the first thing he does is kiss the top of Lena's head and ruffle Noah's hair. His suit is still sharp, still tailored to perfection, still worth more than most people's houses, but when he looks at his family, the armor falls away. This is the man no one else gets to see. Marco and Nino arrive for dinner carrying wine and stories, and they sit at the table not as soldiers reporting to their boss but as family, as people who have chosen this circle and been chosen in return. Marco catches Nino's eye during the second course, and there is a knowing look that passes between them, a recognition that something fundamental has shifted in their world. They toast with wine and juice boxes, and when Noah raises his glass of apple juice high, everyone raises theirs, and they all drink to the same thing, to staying. Lena looks around the table at the faces of the people who chose her when she had nothing, when the world said she was invisible, when the law tried to erase her, and she understands finally what she was fighting for. Not survival. Not money or safety or even justice. Belonging. That night, long after Noah has been tucked into bed with the bookmark his father made, a leather strip with a lion embossed in gold, Alessandro and Lena stand on the penthouse balcony. The November rain is gone, replaced by spring air that tastes clean and new. The city lights spread below them like a million promises kept. "I need to tell you something," Alessandro says. His voice is deeper than usual, weighted with something old and painful. "My brother betrayed me 5 years ago. He sold our family to enemies because he wanted power. I had to kill him to protect everyone I loved. It is the worst thing I have ever done, and I live with it every day." Lena squeezes his hand. She does not flinch. She does not pull away. "You did what you had to do," she says. "That is not the same as being a monster. I wanted you to know. Because I am asking you to choose this life. Choose me. Choose Noah. And I need you to understand what that means." The violence. The world that will never fully let us go. Lena cups his face in her hands and makes him look at her. I choose you. I chose you the night I stopped your bleeding when I should have run. I will choose you every day for the rest of my life. I choose Noah. I choose this. All of it. Alessandro reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small velvet box. When he opens it, a diamond catches the spring moonlight and multiplies it, infinite and brilliant. Then marry me. Be Noah's mother. Be my family. Lena's answer is a kiss that tastes like tears and relief and homecoming. The wedding happens on a Saturday in June, in the same penthouse where they first learned to be a family together. 100 guests, carefully chosen, carefully vetted, men in suits, women in dresses, all of them connected to Alessandro's world in some way. But the only people that matter are standing at the altar when Lena walks in wearing white, her hair down, her hand trembling as she places it in his. Noah stands between them, his small hand held by Marco, and when the judge asks if anyone objects, Noah very seriously says, I do not object, which makes the entire room smile. They are pronounced family, which is perhaps a more accurate title than husband and wife. That same week, the diner where Lena spent 3 years of her life, bent over a stove and a sink and a register, is bought by Alessandro. He renovates it from the ground up, new stoves, new floor, new windows that let light pour in where there was only fluorescent buzzing before. But the most important change is the jobs he creates. For women like Lena. For people no one else will hire. For the invisible. Lena runs it now, not as an employee scraping together tips at 3:22 in the morning, but as the manager, the decision maker, the one who gets to say yes to someone desperate and give them a chance. And when Lena stands behind the counter serving coffee to a young woman with bruises on her neck and fear in her eyes, she leans across and squeezes her hand and whispers, "You are not invisible. You never were." The poker room where this all began, where Lena bled on Alessandro's shirt and changed both their lives with her courage, is shut down and dismantled. In its place, Alessandro builds a community center for the neighborhood, a place where kids like Noah can take art classes and music lessons, where mothers can learn to read, where the invisible are made visible. Anthony Marchetti is never found. His missing person poster fades on telephone poles throughout Boston, the image weathering away like his memory. He exists now only as a cautionary tale whispered in certain circles, a name people do not speak aloud. Catherine Mercer sits in a federal prison cell in Orange, alone, her money useless to her now, her connection severed, her reputation destroyed beyond any possibility of redemption. She does not die in prison, but she might as well. The woman who tried to erase Lena is instead erased herself, forgotten by the world she once ruled. This is Alessandro's justice. Not death, which would be too quick, too easy, too merciful. But systematic, methodical, absolute destruction. 1 year after the courtroom, on the anniversary of her first night of freedom, Lena and Alessandro stand on the balcony again, and he reaches for her left hand. The diamond catches the light like it always does. No regrets, he asks, and his voice is soft in a way that only she gets to hear. Not a single one, Lena says. Below them, the city moves and breathes and carries on. Somewhere, someone is counting the last coins in their wallet. Somewhere, someone is getting beaten in a parking lot. Somewhere, someone is walking into a courtroom thinking they are nobody. But here, on this balcony, in this moment, Lena Vasquez is everything. She is seen. She is chosen. She is home. Family is not always bound by blood but by those who choose to stay when the storm arrives. If this story moved you, drop a like right now and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and turn on notifications because tomorrow we have another story that will absolutely wreck you. Comment below, would you have stayed or would you have run? I will see you in the next one.